Okay, so we're on to episode 16, Young at Heart. Now, is this one of the more memorable ones for you, Brian, or does it fade into the ether like some of the other episodes?
It's one that when I'm looking down the list of episodes, when I've actually got the titles in front of me, I always go, yeah, Young at Heart, I like that one. But it's not like one that kind of I instantly, my mind goes to when people say, name some classic episodes. But it's definitely, off memory anyway, it was a very, very solid one, I would say. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's just jump into this one. So the opening scene is prison in 1989. A prisoner in a wheelchair follows screams down a long hallway to a room where a bloody body lays as a creepy doctor looms over him. The prisoner asks what's up, and the doctor kind of threatens him to make sure he goes back to his room, and that the man on the table is now dead. And as the wheelchair guy is rolling away, he sees the man blink. So it's a very, like, almost spooky kind of mad scientist setup here.
Yeah, kind of experimenting, some mad scientist experiments going on patients as well. So yeah, I think there's some pretty good kind of tension, I guess, that's built from the lighting and just the way it's set up. We don't know who any of these people are. We just know it's a prison or a mental ward or something of that kind of ilk. So yeah, it sets up intrigue, I think.
The only thing about it was the fact that he's just wandering the hallways at night. You know, it doesn't seem something that would generally happen. You know, mental asylum or a prison. Surely they're just not going to let them just wander about at night. You know.
Yeah, especially a prison.
Yeah. So then we just jump straight into the main theme, and then we're right back into Washington present day, and we're at a jewellery robbery, and we meet Reggie, an old friend of Mulder, and Reggie is going to blow Mulder's mind.
Yeah, I've always disliked that line of dialogue, only because he says it twice within the space of like 10 seconds, and he's really insistent. And it's like, as a viewer, you're kind of thinking, whatever you tell us next, best to damn well blow our minds, or else I'm out of here. But yeah, I kind of feel like Reggie makes more of a deal out of this than anyone else does. But yeah. So it's John Barnett, basically. So the thing that's going to blow Mulder's mind is the fact that the MO, everything of the way this heist was kind of committed, fits the MO of a man called John Barnett, who Mulder put away a long time ago, like killed, in fact. Believed he shot him, believed him to be dead. So,
and it's all because Barnett has left a note there.
Yeah. So he likes to play with the whole Fox thing. So because his name is Fox, he uses it like, you know, to catch a fox and this kind of thing in the notes. So.
So then we go to a handwriting specialist because, you know, Fox just can't believe it, and there's a little bit of light flirting going on here. Or was that just me?
No, that's definitely not just you. I like this character, and I actually think it's a shame that she doesn't come back. At least to my recollection, she doesn't come back. But I like the banter they have. I like the interplay between them. And the actress, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but she does a really good job with what is essentially just an expositional character. You know, it's a one-note character. You didn't really need to bring anything of substance to it, but I think they managed to. So it does make me wish they'd have brought her back at some point.
Yeah, I mean, she pops back a couple of times. It's very short scenes, but there is a very definite chemistry there between the two of them.
Yeah.
So then we jump on to CCTV of Barnett's last stand. Scully watches with Reggie at Mulder's mistake of not shooting because of what happened with him not acting. And this is Reggie just kind of sort of filling in Scully in the backstory, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. It's kind of a failure from Mulder's past, isn't it? I mean, this character is on one side, a success of Mulder in that it shows how he caught him in effect, but also it's a failure because him not acting in a particular way and ended up in another officer being killed. So,
and again, it's information that kind of needs to be there to fill in the backstory. But do you not think it's a bit weird that Reggie's grabbed Mulder's new partner and said, "Come check this tape out"?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as Reggie kind of looking out for Mulder. Like Reggie knows that this is going to have some psychological scars that probably run pretty deep with Mulder. So I think he's in doing this. He's kind of protecting Mulder in many ways.
That's definitely one way to look at it. So Mulder and Scully are in an office, and Mulder gets a copy of the death certificate. Scully has this heart-to-heart about seeing the videotape, and it just feels kind of almost a bit cliched and a bit forced and a bit heavy-handed, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of liked it, to be honest. I like that scene. I think so. I think sometimes with a situation like that, I don't mean from a writing standpoint, but just as people, you would be pretty heavy-handed. You would be kind of... I
just feel that you get the scene where they show you what happened, then instantly in the next scene they're talking about the video she just watched, and it's heavy-handed, and then it leads into the next scene where Mulder is watching the young guy's son play football. So you have these increasing three scenes that are just pure like this, we're not going to tell you once. Oh, no. We're going to hammer this home.
They have a habit. I've noticed in this first season. I don't know about you, but they have a habit at this time with Mulder and Scully of kind of giving you these bits of history, these bits of backstory from their past that never seems to come back into it again. Yeah. So like we had the episode Lazarus fairly recently with Scully, and this old flame kind of thing. Mm-hmm. All that stuff is never going to be touched on again in the X-Files. And then like back in one of the earlier ones, I can't remember which episode it was actually, but it's where Scully goes round to her godson's birthday party. It's the one where he runs into
Jersey
the wall.
Devil.
And, yes, Jersey Devil. Oh, what a cracker. We both loved that one. But again, it's someone you're never going to see. There's never ever going to be another reference made to Scully's godson or the best friend. And it's just like we have all these moments in this first season that build up a picture of who these people are in their personal lives and with their backstories, their histories. But it's all kind of elements that are never really going to come into play again. So it's almost throwaway. And these people as well that come into these episodes, like that are part of their life in a big way, part of their history. And they're just going to get killed off in the very episode they've been introduced in. Hold that thought. So we'll get to that.
I'm sure Reggie will be fine. Now let's move on to so Mulder's at the football game, and he ends up leaving and goes to his car, and there's an envelope inside. It's got pictures of him, and then he just starts to scream into the distance like a maniac.
Yeah.
And it just... it's like the succession of these three scenes, and I don't see, from what I've seen of Mulder so far, that doesn't seem to be like it's something they would do.
See, I differ with you on this because this is obviously a very personal thing for Mulder. This is a case that stretches back. It's like we've just pointed out. It's a failure on his part. It's something that haunts him. And he knows who this guy is. He knows how sadistic he is, and this John Barnett can rub him the wrong way. I don't know. I'm not quite with you on this one. I do think that in this case, Mulder is going to be maybe a little bit irrational, and going back to why Reggie gave Scully that tape. I think that's what I mean by him protecting him in effect. He wants Scully to be on her guard, looking out for him, because he knows how how under the skin John Barnett can get when it comes to Mulder.
Okay, well, let me put it this way. Mulder is one of the best profilers in the FBI. And he knows Barnett inside out, and he knows that Barnett is doing this for a reason, and the reason is to get a reaction. So surely he's going to have something in him that goes like, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what this does, to antagonise the guy, to try and bring him out. So he wants me to react at getting these pictures. I won't. I'll just slide in my car, drive away. I won't stand in the street and shout like an idiot.
No, well, again, it's the whole profiler thing. There's a certain detachment that comes with that because, you know, like criminal profilers, so to speak, they don't tend to have any personal involvement in the case beyond, you know, being a police officer and trying to track them down. But Mulder has a very personal connection to this case. You know, like I say, his failure cost a man his life. And I always think that no matter how skillful you are at something, no matter how detached you can become, because it's your job, I think the moment anything becomes personal, that's when, I think you can lose your better judgment. I'm not in this case. I'm not as harsh as you are on it. I don't really have that problem.
I think I'd have been happier if he starts to wildly look around. I think when it starts to get to the screaming in the distance, it just kind of loses me a little bit.
Right.
But yet again, that's another point where we're going to disagree. But but that's a good thing that we have these differing opinions.
Yeah.
Also, at the tail end of that scene, you see, I think it's frosty eyes from somebody at the football game.
Well, yeah, well, that's John Barnett.
Yeah.
Because, obviously
find out later on.
Yeah, they found this way to make him younger, but they can't make it work on the eyes. So he's basically got an old man's eyes in a young man's body.
So the next scene we've got is Mulder argues with Reggie that it is actually Barnett that's doing it.
He's a bit worried about Mulder because Mulder believes that this is John Barnett. So he's I think this is his way of saying just slow down a bit, Mulder. You know, everybody calls you Spooky Mulder, and I can almost kind of see why at this point, because you're jumping on what appears to me to be something quite unfeasible. You know, we know this guy's dead.
And then we have Scully coming in with the sort of photocopy of Barnett's will.
Yes.
And she's saying that he left everything to a fellow inmate.
Yes, and that's the inmate we saw at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
So they go from there, Mulder goes to this woman who is doing like one of these computer recreations. Yeah. Let's see what he would look like now. And as she's doing that, as she's trying to sort that out, we suddenly get a flashback of the court case, of the trial. Yeah. We get this kind of, I guess, a bootleg Jack Nicholson playing John Barnett.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, literally, there's like a bell tolling throughout this scene as well.
Is there?
Yeah, like a boom.
Oh, right. Okay. For some reason, I didn't pick up on that.
Which I didn't feel was that dramatic. It actually kind of took me out of the scene.
So there is this moment when John Barnett kind of looks over to Mulder and whispers, "I'll get you," and then kind of blows him a kiss, so to speak, from the stand. The guy's clearly messed up. He clearly loves antagonising.
It's quite clearly psychopathic acting 101.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the feeling you're not enjoying this episode actually as much as I do.
You're very astute.
It's just a few hints there that were cropping up. So I'm quite good at that kind of thing.
Yeah. You're just like Fox Mulder.
I am.
Crap, that makes me Scully.
It's all right. That means you're good when we need someone to kick some ass.
Or run about in underwear.
Don't go there. Man alive. Moving on.
So Scully gets Barnett's medical records. He was healing before he had that surgery on his hand, which is the opening scene of the movie that we saw. And they're in prison, and the guy in the wheelchair tells him pretty much the story that opens this episode.
So they're speaking to this guy in the prison, asking him how well they knew him, and he's like, yeah, pretty well. So clearly these guys were like best friends and whatnot.
Definitely, if he left him everything in his will.
So they tell this guy that he died of cardiac arrest. That's what it says on his death certificate, anyway. And that's when he starts reeling off this, well, basically the events we saw at the beginning. So he doesn't buy that Barnett was even dead, really, because he says that the doctor told him that Barnett was dead, but when he looked, he saw his eyes and they were blinking. So he's not quite sure himself that Barnett's dead. He's got a hunch that he's very much alive. Yeah, Mulder's getting tooled up. So,
and it's about the. I think there's a line of dialogue that says kind of the ghost of Barnett. I didn't know you believed in ghosts, Scully. So then the phone rings for Mulder, and it happens to be Barnett. And Barnett is teasing him. Really silly voice acting is the main note I've got here.
Yeah, this is this younger version, and he's kind of he's speaking with this really slow kind of cadence to his voice. And like when he laughs, it's really cocky, really slow, and like he's teasing him basically. He's playing with him, And I think Barnett believes himself to be far more intelligent than he actually is. I think he almost sees himself as the Joker to Mulder's Batman. I think he wants to be his arch nemesis.
But then a lot of this scene's kind of filmed with shadows as well. You don't really see much of his face.
No, you just see his mouth, basically.
Yeah, and that in conjunction with the scene that we see earlier, where we see the eyes, you start to think that there's something wrong with this person. There's something really weird, because it's never given you a full sort of picture of what he looks like. I think he says, he must say, does he say some weird line in it? He was hip to the cheese.
Hip to the cheese. Mulder basically wants confirmation for John Barnett being who he claims to be. And then Barnett basically just says, oh, you want confirmation? I'll give you confirmation. And then hangs up. So basically in that moment, Mulder's just killed Reggie.
Yeah. But they never say that line, he was hip to the cheese.
I didn't see that line on there, no.
Gosh,
Do you want me to go back and check it?
My handwriting is awful.
Do you want me to go back and check it?
No, it's fine. I like to believe that it's just going to be there, and that somebody knows what I'm talking about out there, maybe. So yeah, after this scene we go straight on to Reggie asleep, and Mulder calls him. Straight away Barnett attacks Reggie.
Yeah.
And of course leaves one of these little love letters for Mulder.
Yeah. So...
And even during this, Mulder's screaming down the phone.
Yeah, it's very good timing, isn't it? It's like, it's almost like John Barnett has hung out just waiting for Mulder to call so that he can kill him as Mulder's listening to it. It's like, yeah, the timing there is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And then we have the murder scene, and Scully comes in and just takes complete control. She knows it's too close to a nerve for Mulder to handle, so she just slips straight into FBI mode and just takes over completely.
Now, I actually think that in the scene, I believe I wrote notes on this, there's something that Mulder says when she takes control of the scene that actually narked me. Because if I was one of those agents, I'd be like, bitch, please. I'd just be like... She comes in and essentially states the obvious. These agents are already there. looking through evidence, and it's one of them moments almost where it's like she comes in and says, "I want this place looked from top to bottom," and the usual kind of thing you get in like a
Captain Cliche.
Yeah, Captain Cliche. And I do feel like, okay, if she turned up with these agents, you kind of have the right to say that. But when all these agents are already on the scene and they're combing for evidence and looking under doors and dusting for prints, it's somewhat redundant when you come in and start barking these orders. So I get what you're saying. She comes in and she takes charge. But actually, I'd have liked it if she'd have done that before all of the agents were already there doing their jobs.
Yeah, it is a bit weird. Unless they'll stand in a corner like smoking cigarettes or something, just chit-chatting.
Yeah. But we do go from there, however, to back to the forensics woman. So we get the flirtatious forensics woman again, which I gotta say, at this point, I'm kind of wishing we had more of in this episode.
Yeah, she's excellent.
Yeah.
And she kind of confirms that it was the note was written by a right hand, and it was not from a prosthetic hand.
Yeah.
Because I think it's in the opening scene we discovered that his hand was removed.
Yeah, basically, his hand was removed and they replaced it with a salamander. Like they built him a new hand, but the hand that they built him had salamander DNA in. So, because obviously salamanders can reproduce their own tails when they drop off and things. But as a result of that, obviously his hand doesn't look fully human because of that salamander DNA.
Which is an awesome idea.
It is. It's a very good idea. I'd love to see that kind of done again in a movie.
So Scully tells Mulder that the doctor who signed the death certificate hasn't been a doctor since 1979, and his medical licence was revoked due to the fact that he was experimenting on people.
Yeah. So this is basically our Dr. Mengele, or whatever you want to call him from the beginning, and then we go to this institute then for it's basically people suffering from progeria. Now I've not done any research, but I'm assuming this is an actual condition. But they have footage. This doctor is showing them footage. They go to see this doctor who runs the clinic. And there's footage of this kid with progeria, and I can only assume that it's real and not prosthetics. But they have the actor, so the actor who plays this doctor, Joe Ridley, they have him in the footage. So presumably they found one of these kids in real life who suffers from this disease and had him perform this scene with her. Either that or that is a damn good prosthesis, it must be said.
Yeah, it sounds like a sort of horrible condition.
Yeah.
So when they're at this institute, they talk to one of the doctors there who tells them about Dr. Ridley and how he wanted to begin the human trials even though they hadn't sort of fully developed the drugs properly. So, and then Riley just kind of ran away to South America to further his research. Yeah,
basically. And they did give him the nickname Dr. Mengele. So, but so he disappeared and was never seen from again, but presumably, like, as you say, didn't give up on the idea of completing what he had started.
And it's that kind of similar idea to the fact that the Nazi scientists ran away to sort of South America to continue their experiments as well.
A theme that is quite prevalent in the X-Files, I'd say. It crops up many times, the idea of the escaped war criminals, the Nazi scientists. It'll be used at the start of season 3, and it'll be used again within the middle of season 3, and then later again within the series. So there's definitely that idea. I mean, in this case, I can't remember actually. Do they? I think they do make because doesn't Deep Throat come into this episode at some point?
Yep.
He does, yeah. So this is basically the start of that idea. You know, they capitalise on this idea, like I say, many times throughout the series, which is this conspiracy, this of men, these people that Deep Throat works with, are the kind of people who took in those Nazi war criminals in order to basically exploit their research.
As they're kind of walking and talking, as they do, Mulder says that they're looking for a young man. He's had this epiphany.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the woman that you know, enhances all these pictures and asks him to age the person backwards. Just, as you say, make them youthful.
Surely they could have just found a photo of John Barnett as a young man.
This is my major thing. I mean, he seems to have been in and out the systems. Can you de-age this picture? But I've got one over here. No, look, do it in the computer. That was a bugbear for me.
I will say I like some of the musical cues in this episode. I know you didn't like the thing with the bells in the court case, but there's this scene with it comes next, basically, with Scully typing at a computer. She's doing her usual kind of case file thing on a computer, and then we see Barnett's hand kind of creeping around the door, so he's creeped into the house. Yeah. And as he's doing that, we have this really nice score from Mark Snow, and it's kind of like The Omen. It reminds me of the music you get in films like The Omen.
I've actually got that in
Judging from
my
the look
notes.
on your face, yes, judging from the look on your face, that's exactly what you've noted. So,
and they've got like men chanting. It's like that kind of.
Yeah, it's that kind of music. But a really good job, really great job, I think, in the music department from Snow.
Absolutely. This is one of my favourite scenes in the movie because I've got on it here. It's kind of very horror centric. It's got the Omen music. It's a very tense sequence, and then there's a knock at the door, and it's Dr. Joe Ridley looking exactly the same. And that's when it reveals that Barnett is already in the apartment, and he just kind of slinks away. It was it's an excellent scene. If I remember right, she's at her desk and she goes for her gun. Yeah,
she does. So she's kind of walking around the house with a gun, just because obviously she's heard a noise and being on a guard, given what happened to Reggie Perdue. But yeah, the music just works really well, and it's nicely shot. Some nice lighting actually on the when she sat at her computer. The lighting coming through the blinds in the window. It's just really good scene. And the scene that comes next, which is essentially a continuation of this, which is the whole conversation with Dr. Joe Ridley. I really like the scene, and that is in no small part down to this actor who's playing Joe Ridley. Now, he's someone who I believe will come into this series again. Not the character, but the actor. I think he does have another part at some point, one of them small parts. But he's great here. He's just this scene, the whole dialogue between them.
And this is the one where he kind of says as well that Barnett is fine other than his eyes, which he's got a problem with, and he's got a lizard hand.
Yeah. just your minor issues, you know.
At this point, I am giddy to see this thing. I really am. I'm like a lizard hand. I can't wait. And then we have Deep Throat coming into the episode.
Yeah.
And he tells Mulder about Barnett trying to sell all of Ridley's information, research to the government in exchange for clemency and asylum.
Yeah, but I mean, just before we move on to that, let me see what. Right, yeah, because in that scene prior to that with Joe Ridley, he's done that research on himself, but he's actually dying. Whereas with John Barnett, he isn't. The research has worked. So John Barnett is basically a success. He's the culmination of Joe Ridley's research. So the government definitely want to get their hands on either Barnett or Ridley and his research. Yeah. Oh yeah, so she realizes from the light from something on her
answer machine
that someone has checked her messages, which wasn't her. And obviously she felt like Barnett was in her apartment. She felt someone was in the apartment.
Yes.
So the fact that she now knows someone has checked her messages kind of makes her think, hey up. So, and when she checks the messages, she knows that Barnett knows that Scully will be at a friend's recital, piano or cello recital or something like that. Yeah. So obviously that then gives them the perfect opportunity to set a trap for Barnett.
Yes, absolutely, which they definitely do at the recital. There's plenty of people about. They're looking for Barnett, making sure that nobody can get into the building, not realising that he's already kind of there. And he's the piano tuner.
Yeah, I mean, like before that though, we have another one of them phone calls with Barnett and Mulder, and just going back to something you said before, which I hadn't really thought about until you mentioned it, but with each time that we see Barnett, we see more of him. And I kind of feel like that plays into the psychology of Mulder, and just Mulder and Scully really, because they didn't know what this guy looked like at the start, and as they learn more about him, we keep seeing more of his face, and then by the time we get to the recital, they know who they're looking for, and then we see him, in all his glory, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a conscious decision to shoot it like that, just to play into that. But it's a if it wasn't, it was a very happy accident. Put it that way.
So pretty soon we end up in a similar situation to which Mulder did when they caught Barnett. With that case, that in this case, Barnett has the cello player as a hostage, and Barnett starts to tease Mulder again about this, but this time round Mulder doesn't think twice about it and promptly puts a bullet into Barnett.
Yeah. It's quite abrupt.
And Scully gets shot as well.
Yeah, I mean, he just out and out. I mean, that's how the scene starts, isn't it? He just basically goes right up to her, puts a bullet in her. Yeah,
but I mean, it's weird.
Off.
Like, you don't even think anything to it. You're just like, bulletproof vest.
They're
not culling her off.
I do wonder why Barnett would shoot her in the stomach or even anywhere near the chest area, given that he knows they're FBI agents. I think in this case a face shot would have been the way to go, and I don't believe for a second that someone of John Barnett's kind of psychology would go for anything other than a face shot, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones. So, like I said, Scully wakes up, she's got the magical bulletproof vest. Then the doctors are rapidly trying to save Barnett because he has all this research somewhere.
There's a cheeky wink. Sorry, just to go back. There's a nice cheeky wink from Mulder to Scully in the before Barnett shoots Scully. They're kind of looking at each other, and the scene itself actually reminds me of that other episode that you loved so much, Fire. It kind of has a similar feel to the scene when they're in the hotel and they're looking for the dude. It kind of feels a little bit like that, but. In this case, Mulder kind of is on better terms with Scully, and he just gives a little cheeky wink, which is a nice little character moment, I think. But so I'll let you pick up where you were going to go.
So the doctors are working on Barnett, trying to save him, and just next to them is the cigarette smoking man, just trying to get any kind of just trying to get his hands on this research, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's very hard actually to make out that is actually William B. Davis, the smoking man from the very first episode, from the pilot episode, because from my recollection, this is the first time he's reappeared since that pilot episode. I don't think he's been in another one, has he?
Can't be sure.
I'm pretty sure this is the first time he's resurfaced, if my memory serves me correctly. And I find it bizarre that they would bring him back for this, only to shoot it in such a way that you can barely even recognise that it's him anyway. Given at this stage in the X-Files, the only other episode we had him in which he didn't even say a word, was the pilot. I think by the time you get to this point, you wouldn't even take any notice of this guy, I don't think. And it's only watching the series in hindsight, knowing who this guy goes on to be, that scene kind of takes on a bit more relevance, I guess. But yeah, without that, it's just, who is that guy? No one cares. They could have brought anyone in. The fact that they brought William B. Davis back for that feels a little bit, bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm. And then the episode just kind of finishes with a camera pushing in on locker 935, which we can only assume is where all the research has been hidden.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything special about the number 935, or if it's just a random choice.
I'm sure there probably is, because Chris Carter and the writers and whatnot do tend to use numbers, but I'm not one of those. I'm not that guy. I'm not the one who kind of looks at the numbers and wants to know all the ins and outs of what they mean. It's not important really to the to the meaning of the episode overall. So I've never been that person who looks into it, but I would say that if they ever do another standalone X-Files movie, that would be a great place to start. I think going back to that research, having it found, and then maybe having some kind of full-on chameleon man or something, I don't know. But who knows?
Okay, so wrap-up time. Brian, do you want to go first, or...?
Yeah, okay, this is a hard one, because I actually like this episode. I still like this episode. It's solid, I think. It's one that I can put on and again and just kind of watch. But kind of discussing things through with you, I do see that there are many parts in it that do feel heavy-handed. There are times when characters are, going to, like you said, Psychopath 101 and all that kind of stuff. But I like the story. I like the interplay between Mulder and the expert woman. I can't remember what she does. And yeah, I will admit, before we started discussing it, I gave it a 4. But in the process of discussing it, I'm going to drop that to a 3.5. But I do still find it a very entertaining episode.
Yeah, it's definitely not one of the worst. But I think it's kind of been... I don't know, maybe the script has been written by somebody with more of a lifetime melodrama kind of background, because it certainly feels that way to me. It doesn't ring true with some of the character motivations with me, but it does bring back the cigarette smoking man. It does have a guy with a lizard hand, which gets a couple of points in my book. I love the idea of that. Like you said, the chemistry between the handwriting expert and Mulder, it's a shame he didn't come back. I actually like the kind of relationship between Reggie and Mulder as well. And to see Reggie get offed so quickly was disappointing as well.
That is disappointing, actually, only because it's become a bit of a habit now. It's almost like if you're someone from Mulder or Scully's personal back history, you're essentially the equivalent of a red-shirted Star Trek crew member.
Yeah.
You're not going to survive. So,
but I think the problem is as well is this one of the first ones that have turned up that hasn't been a complete fool or incompetent friend to Mulder or Scully, because everyone that turned up is either a douchebag, out for their own skin, or just completely messing things up and needed their help.
Yeah, I think you could be right on that one. This is the first time that actually the person from their past who happens to work in law enforcement does actually have their back. Isn't out to screw them over or just use them in some way. So,
yeah. Anyway, let's just get to my score. I gave it 2 out of 5.
See, I think that's really unfair. Given some of the episodes we've reviewed, there seems to be a pattern developing in which when we have a episode that is quite Mulder-centric, you don't seem to go for them as much. And when we have one that focuses a bit more on Scully, and I'll agree, actually, I will agree on that I do think the ones that tend to be more Scully-centric also tend to be better written. But I mean, I was much fairer on Fire as well, obviously. I liked Fire. I'll go on record as saying I actually think it's a good episode. I don't think this one is quite as good as Fire, mainly because I don't think the villain is as strong, to be honest. But no, I definitely think it's far above a 2-star rating.
Oh, you did? You gave it 3.5, Brian.
Oh, well, yeah, there you go.
So next up is EBE. Is this a memorable episode? Is this one to really look out for?
This is, yeah, I think it is. It's quite a key episode, actually. It's there's a lot of elements in it that are... Well, for a start, we get the introduction of Lone Gunmen, which are fan favourites. We get some quite personal stuff for Deep Throat, so we see him more as a person in that episode rather than just a exposition guy, just someone who just turns up and gives Mulder information. So yeah, I think it's quite an important episode, I'd say, but whether the stuff that happens in it will come back in later episodes, it's not that level of importance. But for telling us a bit more about characters and introducing some important characters, it is quite an important episode overall.
Good. I'll look forward to that one then. I remember the Lone Gunman a little bit. I remember liking the 3 guys.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that one. As always, our social media links are in the comment box below, and we'll see you next time on the X-Files Revisited.